Lila Bennett's hands were shaking so hard she couldn't hold the bouquet. Not because she was nervous, because the man waiting at the altar had killed before. At least that's what everyone in Copper Bluff said. And in 30 minutes, she would belong to him. Not by choice, by debt, by desperation, by a father who couldn't look her in the eye when he told her what he'd done. She was 22 years old, and her life was already over. If you're new here, subscribe and follow this story all the way to the end. And drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from so I can see just how far this story travels. Lila stood in the back room of the church and stared at herself in the cracked mirror. The dress was her mother's. The veil was borrowed from a neighbor who pitied her. And the tears she kept blinking back were entirely her own. "You don't have to do this." Her younger sister Nora stood behind her, barely 16, voice cracking like dry wood. "There has to be another way." "There isn't," Lila said. "Papa could sell the cattle." "There are no cattle left, Nora. There's nothing left." Nora grabbed her arm. "Then we leave, tonight, you and me. We pack what we can carry, and we ride south, and we never look back." Lila turned to face her sister. She wanted to say yes. Every bone in her body wanted to say yes. But she looked at Nora's thin frame, the hollows under her eyes, the dress that hung too loose because they'd been skipping meals for months, and she swallowed the word down like broken glass. "If I don't marry him," Lila said quietly, "we lose the ranch. Papa goes to debtor's prison, and you end up on the street. That's not a maybe, Nora. That's Tuesday." Nora's chin trembled. "He'll hurt you." "Maybe. People say he beat a man half to death with his bare hands. People say a lot of things." "Lila." Nora's voice dropped to a whisper. "They say men disappear from his ranch, that he buries them where nobody looks." Lila closed her eyes. She had heard every story. Cole Grayson was a ghost wrapped in leather and silence. He ran the largest ranch in the territory, and he ran it with an iron grip. No one crossed him, no one questioned him. And now, because her father had borrowed money from the wrong people and gambled away every last cent they had, Cole Grayson had offered a deal. He would pay off every debt. He would save the ranch. He would keep the Bennett family from ruin. All he wanted in return was a wife. 1 year, Lila told her sister. "I survive 1 year, then I walk away." He agreed to those terms. "And you believe him?" Lila didn't answer. She picked up the bouquet with both hands, pressed her trembling fingers around the stems until they stopped shaking, and walked toward the door. Their father was waiting in the hallway. Thomas Bennett looked like a man who had already died, and was just waiting for someone to tell him to lie down. His eyes were red. His suit was wrinkled. He smelled like whiskey. "Lila, sweetheart, don't," she said. "I never meant for this to happen. But it did. If there was any other way." She stopped walking and looked at him. Really looked at him. This was the man who used to carry her on his shoulders through the wheat fields. The man who taught her to ride before she could read. The man who held her mother's hand every single night until the fever took her. And now he was handing his oldest daughter to a stranger because he couldn't stop losing at cards. "You already said your piece, Papa," Lila said. "You said it when you shook his hand and agreed to the price. So let's not pretend this is anything other than what it is." Thomas flinched like she'd slapped him. He opened his mouth, then closed it, then nodded slowly and offered his arm. They walked into the church together. It was small, fewer than 20 people. Most of them were there out of curiosity, not celebration. Lila could feel their eyes on her, heavy as stones. She heard whispers crawling along the pews like insects. Poor girl. She doesn't know what she's walking into. Lord have mercy on that child. And then she saw him. Cole Grayson stood at the altar like a man carved from the same wood as the church walls. He was tall, broader than she expected. His jaw was set hard, his dark hair pushed back from a face that looked like it had been shaped by weather and war. He wore black from collar to boot, and when his eyes met hers across the aisle, Lila felt something cold move through her chest. Not fear exactly. Something worse. Recognition. Like some part of her already knew this man would change everything. He didn't smile. He didn't nod. He just watched her walk toward him with an expression she couldn't read, and that terrified her more than cruelty would have. The ceremony was short. The preacher spoke fast like he wanted it over with. Cole's voice was low and steady when he said his vows. Lila's voice was barely a whisper. When the preacher said, "You may kiss the bride," Cole looked at her for a long moment. Then he leaned forward, pressed his lips to her forehead, instead of her mouth, and stepped back. The church went silent. Lila blinked. She had braced herself for possession, for a man staking his claim in front of the whole town. Instead, he had given her the smallest possible kindness and she didn't know what to do with it. Outside the church, people gathered in clusters, watching the newlyweds climb into Cole's wagon. Martha Perkins, the town gossip, grabbed Lila's wrist before she could step up. "You listen to me, girl," Martha hissed. "You keep your head down and you don't cross him. There was a ranch hand last spring, young fellow, argued with Cole over wages. Nobody's seen that boy since." Lila pulled her wrist free. "Thank you for your concern, Mrs. Perkins. I'm not being concerned. I'm being honest. That man you just married isn't right. Something in him broke a long time ago, and broken men are dangerous." Cole appeared beside the wagon. He didn't look at Martha. He simply held his hand out to help Lila up. His palm was rough, calloused, and warm. "Ready?" he asked. It was the first word he'd spoken directly to her all day. "Yes," she said, though nothing about her was ready. The ride to his ranch took nearly 2 hours. They didn't speak for the first hour. The silence sat between them like a third passenger, heavy and breathing. Lila kept her hands folded in her lap and watched the landscape scroll past without seeing any of it. Her mind was doing what it always did when she was frightened. Planning, calculating, mapping escape routes. "You're thinking about running," Cole said. Lila's breath caught. "Excuse me. Your eyes keep moving to the horizon. You're measuring distance, figuring out how long it would take on foot." He paused. "About 6 hours to the nearest town, if you're wondering. 8 if you go cross-country to avoid the road." I'm not going to stop you. If you want to leave, you leave. Tonight, tomorrow, whenever you decide. The door's never locked." Lila stared at him. "You paid a fortune for this marriage. You're telling me you'd just let me walk away? I paid a fortune to settle your father's debts. The marriage was part of the arrangement because he offered it, not because I demanded it." The words hit her like cold water. "What?" Cole kept his eyes on the road. "Your father came to me, not the other way around. He owed money to Jack Harlow. You know what kind of man Harlow is. Your father offered me land first. I didn't want land. He offered me cattle. He had no cattle. Then he offered me you." Lila felt the ground shift beneath her. "That's not what he told me." "I expect it isn't. He said you approached him. He said you wanted a wife, and you picked our family because we were vulnerable." Cole's jaw tightened. "Your father said a lot of things to a lot of people. Most of them weren't true. That's how we got into this mess." Lila's hands were shaking again. Not from fear this time, from anger. White, hot, blinding anger that started in her stomach and spread through her whole body like brush fire. "Why did you say yes?" she asked through clenched teeth. "If you didn't demand it, why agree to marry a stranger?" For the first time, something shifted in Cole's expression. The stone cracked just for a second, and underneath it, Lila saw something she wasn't expecting. Loneliness. Deep and old and bone-tired. "Because I've been alone a long time," he said quietly. "And I was tired of it." They arrived at the ranch as the sun was dropping behind the mountains. It was bigger than Lila had imagined. The main house was solid, well-built, surrounded by fences and outbuildings that looked maintained and cared for. Horses moved in the paddock. Dogs barked at their arrival. Several ranch hands looked up from their work, tipping their hats respectfully. A woman in her 50s stepped off the porch. Her hair was gray, her face was lined with sun and laughter, and her apron was dusted with flour. "You must be Lila," the woman said warmly. "I'm Ruth. I run the house. Your room is ready." "My room," Lila repeated. Ruth glanced at Cole, then back at Lila. Second floor east side. Best light in the morning. I put fresh linens on the bed and there's hot water if you want a bath. Lila looked at Cole. My own room. He was already climbing down from the wagon, not looking at her. I told you, the door's never locked. That includes your door from the inside. You lock it any time you want. He walked toward the barn without another word. Ruth watched him go with a small, knowing smile. Don't let the rough edges fool you, dear. That man spent 3 days making sure your room was right. Changed the curtains twice. Asked me what kind of flowers women like. He doesn't seem like the flower type, Lila muttered. He isn't. That's exactly my point. Over the next several days, Lila waited for the mask to drop. She waited for the cruelty to begin, for the control to tighten, for the monster everyone warned her about to finally show its face. She slept with a chair propped against her door every night. She mapped every exit. She kept a bag packed under her bed, but the cruelty never came. Cole ate breakfast early, worked all day, and came in late. He spoke to her politely but briefly, like a man who had forgotten how to make conversation and was embarrassed by it. He never entered her room. He never questioned where she went or what she did. He never raised his voice. On the 4th morning, Lila walked into the kitchen and found Ruth kneading bread. Can I ask you something? Lila said. Anything, child. The stories about him, the violence, the men who disappeared, are they true? Ruth's hands stopped moving. She wiped them on her apron and turned to face Lila with eyes that were careful and measured. Let me tell you about the man you married, Ruth said. 2 years ago, a family came through here. Mother and 3 children. The father was a drunk and a brute. He'd broken that woman's arm twice. Cole found them on the road, half-starved, the youngest with bruises on her face. What did he do? He brought them here, fed them, gave them the guest cabin. And when the husband came looking for them, riding in drunk and swinging a rifle, Cole walked out to meet him alone. And he took the rifle away, broke it in half. Then he told that man if he ever touched his wife or children again, he would make sure no doctor in the territory could put him back together. The man left, never came back. The family stayed for 6 months until they were strong enough to start over in Oregon. Lila sat down slowly. And the ranch hand, the one who disappeared, Ruth sighed. Billy Crane, he didn't disappear. He stole from Cole, stole wages meant for the other workers, families who depended on that money. Cole fired him. Billy left in the middle of the night rather than face the other hands. He's working a mine in Nevada, last I heard. Then why does everyone in town think Cole killed him? Because people love a villain, Ruth said simply. And Cole never bothered to correct them. He doesn't explain himself to anyone, never has. Figures if people want to believe the worst, that's their business. That afternoon, Lila watched from the porch as Cole worked with a young horse in the paddock. The animal was wild, skittish, throwing its head and stamping. The hands kept their distance. But Cole stood in the center, patient as stone, letting the horse circle him, letting it come close, back away, come close again. He never grabbed for it, never shouted. He just waited. And after nearly an hour, the horse walked up to him and pressed its nose against his chest. That night, Lila did not put the chair against her door. It was on the 7th day that everything cracked open. A man rode into the ranch at noon. Lila was in the garden with Ruth when she heard the horse and the shouting. She came around the house to find a heavy-set man on horseback, red-faced and loud, jabbing his finger at Cole. I know you've been diverting water from my creek, Grayson. My cattle are dying, and it's your doing. Cole stood with his arms crossed, his voice flat. Your cattle are dying because you overstock your land and you don't rotate pasture. The water hasn't changed course in 20 years, Dawson. Go talk to a surveyor if you don't believe me. I'm not talking to any surveyor. I'm talking to you. And I'm telling you, if I lose one more head, I'm coming back with every man I've got. You're welcome to try. Come. Dawson's eyes shifted to Lila. Something ugly moved across his face. This the wife I heard about, the one Bennett sold to you? He laughed. How much did she cost? Maybe I'll make an offer when you're done with her. The air changed. Lila felt it like a temperature drop. Every hand in the yard went still. Ruth took a step back. Cole didn't move. His arms didn't uncross. His expression didn't change. But when he spoke, his voice was different, lower, quieter, and somehow that made it worse. "Get off my land, Dawson, right now. And if you ever speak about my wife again, I won't wait for you to come back with your men. I'll come find you first." Dawson's face went white. Not angry white, afraid white. He looked at Cole the way a man looks at the edge of a cliff when he realizes he's leaning too far. Without another word, he yanked his horse around and rode away fast. Cole uncrossed his arms. He turned to Lila. For 1 second she saw it. The fire. The thing that lived behind his silence, behind his patience, behind his careful control. It wasn't rage. It was something older. Something that had been forged in loss and loneliness, and years of being misunderstood. "I'm sorry you had to hear that," he said. "Don't be." Lila's voice was steady in a way that surprised even her. "You didn't say anything wrong." He looked at her like no one had ever said that to him before. Then he nodded once, turned, and walked back to the barn. That night, Lila couldn't sleep. She lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, replaying the day in her mind. The way Dawson had talked about her like merchandise. The way Cole had shut it down, not with fists, but with a kind of controlled power that was more frightening and more reassuring than any violence could have been. She got out of bed, pulled a shawl around her shoulders, and went downstairs. A light burned in Cole's study. She knocked. "Come in." He was sitting at his desk, papers spread out in front of him. He looked up when she entered, and she saw surprise cross his face. "Can't sleep," she said. "Me neither. Most nights." She sat in the chair across from his desk. "How long have you had this ranch?" 12 years. Built it from nothing. Alone. Ruth came on in the 3rd year. The hands after that. But yeah, in the beginning it was just me." Lila pulled the shawl tighter. "Why here in the middle of nowhere?" Cole leaned back. His eyes dropped to the desk. "My parents died when I was 14. Typhoid. I had nothing. No family, no money, no future. I drifted for years. Worked cattle drives. Took any job that paid. Got into fights because I was angry and didn't know what to do with it." He paused. Lila didn't fill the silence. She knew better than to rush a man who wasn't used to talking. "One day, I looked at myself and I didn't like what I saw, so I stopped fighting and started building. I came here because nobody else wanted this land. I figured if nobody wanted it, nobody would bother me. I was right mostly, until I got big enough to make people jealous. And the reputation, some of it I earned, some of it people made up. After a while, it didn't matter which was which. The reputation kept trouble away. That was enough. But it also kept everyone else away," Lila said quietly. Cole met her eyes. In the lamplight, he looked younger, less like the feared cowboy, and more like a man who had been standing in the cold for a very long time, watching warmth through a window too proud to knock. "Yeah," he said, "it did." They sat in silence for a long time. Not the heavy silence of the wagon ride. Something different. Something that felt for the first time like understanding. Lila stood to leave. At the door she stopped. "Cole?" "Yeah." "I'm not going to run." He looked at her. She couldn't read his face, but something in it shifted, something deep and careful. "Not yet, anyway," she added. And for the first time since she'd met him, Cole Grayson almost smiled. Lila went back to her room and sat on the edge of the bed. Her packed bag was still underneath it. She pulled it out, looked at it for a long moment. Then she unpacked it. Piece by piece. Slowly. Like she was making a decision she didn't fully understand yet. The next morning she walked into the kitchen before dawn. Ruth was already there, but so was Cole, sitting at the table with coffee, looking surprised to see her up so early. "I want to learn," Lila said. Cole set down his cup. "Learn what?" "Everything. The ranch, the cattle, the books. If I'm going to be here, I'm not going to sit around being decorative. I want to work." Ruth smiled into her flour. Cole studied Lila for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "All right," he said. "But I start at 4. Then I'll be up at 3:30. Something passed between them. Not warmth exactly, not yet, but something closer to respect. And in a marriage built on debt and desperation, respect was a foundation nobody expected. What Lila didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that her decision to stay would set into motion a chain of events that would tear open every lie her father had told, expose a danger far greater than Cole Grayson's reputation, and force her to choose between the life she'd planned and the man she was only beginning to understand. 3 weeks into the marriage, Lila stopped flinching when Cole walked into a room. She didn't notice the change right away. It happened the way dawn happens, so gradually that by the time you see it, the darkness has already gone. She was up every morning at 3:30, just like she promised. Cole never commented on it. He simply poured a second cup of coffee and set it at her place before she came downstairs. It was a small thing, but Lila had learned to read small things the way other people read books. The ranch work was harder than anything she'd done on her father's land. Cole ran a tight operation. Every fence mended, every animal counted, every dollar tracked. Lila threw herself into the books first, and within a week she found discrepancies that Cole had missed for months. "You're undercharging Henderson for feed," she told him one evening, spreading the ledger across his desk. "By almost 12%. That's been going on since last fall." Cole leaned over the numbers. His arm brushed hers, and she didn't pull away. She noted that, filed it somewhere in the back of her mind, and kept talking. "And you're overpaying for lumber. There's a mill in Billings that runs 15 cents cheaper per board." Cole looked at her. "How do you know about the Billings mill?" "I asked around." "You rode to Billings?" "I wrote a letter, 3 letters actually. Got a response yesterday." He stared at her for a long moment, and Lila braced herself for irritation. Men didn't like being told they were wrong. Her father never had. But Cole just nodded slowly. "Fix it," he said. "What?" "You found the problem. Fix it. I'll back whatever decision you make." Lila blinked. She had expected resistance, argument, maybe even anger. Instead, he handed her the pen and walked out. Ruth was waiting in the kitchen when Lila came through, still holding the pen, like she didn't quite believe it was real. "He gave me authority over the books," Lila said. "I know. He told me he was going to. Before I even showed him the numbers." Ruth smiled. 3 days ago. Said you were sharper than anyone he'd ever hired, and he'd be a fool not to let you work." Something warm moved through Lila's chest. Not affection. Not yet. But the absence of the fear she'd been carrying for weeks, and that absence felt like its own kind of gift. The shift between them was gradual, built in coffee cups and quiet mornings, and the slow rhythm of shared labor. Cole began talking more. Not much. He wasn't that kind of man and probably never would be. But he started telling her things. About the ranch, about the territory, about the years he spent building something from bare ground and stubbornness. "The first winter I almost quit," he told her one morning while they rode the fence line together. "Lost half the herd to cold. I sat in that house alone, 23 years old, and I thought about walking away and never looking back." "What stopped you?" "Spite mostly." Lila laughed. It came out before she could catch it, bright and sudden, and Cole looked at her like he'd never heard that sound before. "What?" she said. "Nothing. Just, that's a good sound." She looked away. Her cheeks were hot and she didn't want him to see. But the peace didn't last. It never does. On a Tuesday morning, Lila rode into Copper Bluff for supplies. She went alone. Cole offered to come, but she refused. She wasn't going to be the woman who couldn't go to town without a man beside her. The general store was busy. Lila was loading flour into the wagon when a voice cut through the noise like a blade. "Well, if it isn't Mrs. Grayson." Lila turned. A man leaned against the hitching post, arms folded, hat low over his eyes. He was lean and sharp-featured with a smile that had too many teeth in it. 2 men stood behind him, thicker, watching her with flat eyes. "Do I know you?" Lila asked. You don't, but I know your husband. Name's Jack Harlow. The name hit her like ice water. Jack Harlow. The man her father owed money to. The reason she was married at all. I don't have business with you, Mr. Harlow, she said, keeping her voice even. Maybe not, but your daddy did. And the way I see it, his business became your business the day you took the Grayson name. My husband paid my father's debts. That account is closed. Harlow pushed off the hitching post and took a step closer. See, that's where it gets complicated, sweetheart. Your daddy didn't just owe me money. He owed me information, promises he made, things he said he'd deliver. I don't know anything about that. I think you do, or you will once I explain it to you. He took another step. Your daddy told me things about Grayson's ranch, about what's really on that land, about why a man with no family and no connections suddenly got so rich so fast. Lila held her ground. Her heart was hammering, but her face gave nothing. Whatever my father told you was probably a lie. He's good at those. Harlow's smile widened. Maybe, but lies don't usually cost a man his life. Everything went cold. What did you say? Your daddy disappeared 3 days ago, Mrs. Grayson, left his ranch in the middle of the night, took nothing with him. Nora's been looking for him. Nobody can find him. You're lying. Am I? When's the last time you talked to your father? Lila's mind raced. She hadn't written to her father since the wedding. Hadn't wanted to. The anger was still too raw, too sharp. And Nora's last letter had been over a week ago. I'll take that silence as my answer, Harlow said. Now, here's what I think happened. Your daddy got in over his head. He made deals with people worse than me. And when things got tight, he ran. But the debts don't run with him. They stay right here. Cole paid everything. He paid what your daddy told him about. But your daddy lied about the total. There's more, a lot more. And the men who hold those notes aren't patient men. Lila felt the ground tilting. Her father had lied about the debts. Of course he had. Of course. Harlow leaned in close. Close enough that she could smell tobacco and something sour beneath it. I'm not your enemy, Mrs. Grayson. I'm actually trying to help you. There are people coming for what your father promised, and when they find out he's gone, they'll come for the next best thing. That's you, and your husband. Get away from her. The voice came from behind Harlow, and every man on the street seemed to stop breathing at once. Lila looked past Harlow's shoulder. Cole stood 20 feet away. He wasn't armed. He wasn't moving. He was just standing there, with his hands at his sides, and somehow that was more terrifying than if he'd been holding a rifle. Harlow turned slowly. Grayson, we were just having a conversation. You were standing too close to my wife in the middle of a public street with 2 men backing you up. That's not a conversation. That's intimidation. And you've got about 10 seconds to make it stop. Easy now. I came with information. Figured your wife ought to know that her daddy's gone missing. Cole's eyes moved to Lila. She saw the question in them. She nodded slightly. It's true. Whatever Thomas Bennett owes, Cole said, his voice dropping low. He owes. It's got nothing to do with Lila. Nothing to do with my ranch. If you or anyone else comes near her again, the conversation will be very different. Is that a threat? It's geography. You're standing on the wrong side of it. Harlow held Cole's stare for 3 seconds. Then 4. Then he smiled that ugly smile, tipped his hat to Lila, and walked away with his men falling in behind him. Cole didn't move until they were out of sight. Then he crossed the distance to Lila in 4 long strides. Are you all right? I'm fine. You're shaking. I'm angry. There's a difference. He looked at her, and she saw something in his face she hadn't seen before. Concern. Real, unguarded concern that he couldn't hide fast enough. What did he tell you? Cole asked. My father's missing, and apparently his debts were bigger than he told you. Cole's jaw tightened. Get in the wagon. We'll talk at home. They rode back in silence, but this time the silence was different. It was charged electric, full of things pressing against its edges. At the ranch, Cole told Ruth to make coffee and shut the study door. He sat behind his desk and Lila sat across from him, and for the first time, they faced each other not as strangers sharing a house, but as partners facing a common threat. "Tell me everything," Harlow said. Cole told her. Every word. She did. She left nothing out. When she finished, Cole was quiet for a long time. His fingers were pressed together in front of his face, and his eyes were fixed on something she couldn't see. "Your father," he said finally. "I knew he was a gambler. I knew he was desperate, but I didn't know he was playing both sides." "What do you mean?" "Harlow said your father gave him information about my ranch, about why I got rich. That means your father was trading secrets for credit, using me as collateral before the marriage was ever part of the deal." The truth of it settled over Lila like a weight. Her father hadn't just sold her, he'd sold them both. He'd been selling Cole's secrets to dangerous men, piling debts on debts, weaving lies so thick that by the time anyone found the truth, he was already gone. "I'm going to find him," Lila said. "No. He's my father. He's a liar who put you in danger. And if Harlow is right about the people holding those notes, your father didn't run from debt. He ran for his life, which means anyone looking for him is walking into something ugly. I have to know if Nora is safe." Cole paused. That landed. She could see it land. "I'll send 2 of my men to check on Nora tomorrow," he said. "If she's in trouble, we bring her here." "Cole." "Lila." His voice was firm, but not hard. "I made a deal to protect your family. That deal still holds. But I'm not going to let you ride into something blind because your father couldn't tell the truth." She wanted to argue. Every instinct in her screamed to saddle a horse and ride for her father's ranch right now tonight. But she looked at Cole, and she saw something she hadn't expected to see when she married him. A man she could trust. "Tomorrow," she said. "First thing." "First thing," he agreed. She stood to leave. At the door, she stopped. "Cole, thank you for today, in town." "You don't need to thank me." "Yes, I do. Because nobody's ever stepped in for me before. Not once. Not my whole life. So yes, I need to thank you. And I need you to hear it." He held her gaze for a long moment. Something moved behind his eyes that was raw and unprotected, and Lila realized with a jolt that this man who terrified an entire territory was completely defenseless against kindness. "You're welcome," he said quietly. She left the study. She climbed the stairs. She went into her room and closed the door and pressed her back against it and stood there in the dark, breathing. Her father was gone. Dangerous men were circling. The marriage she thought was a cage might be the only safe place left. And the man she married for survival was becoming something she hadn't planned for. Something she wasn't ready for. Something that scared her more than Jack Harlow and his men ever could. Because Lila Bennett was starting to feel something for Cole Grayson. And feelings in her experience were the most dangerous thing of all. Cole's men left before dawn. Lila stood on the porch and watched them go, her arms wrapped around herself against the morning cold. Cole came up beside her, holding 2 cups of coffee, and handed her one without a word. "They'll be there by midday," he said. "We'll know by evening. And if Nora isn't there, then we look harder." They stood together in the gray light, not touching, not speaking, and Lila realized this was the first morning since the wedding that she hadn't woken up thinking about leaving. She'd woken up thinking about staying, and that terrified her most of all. The riders returned at dusk. Lila ran to meet them before they'd even stopped their horses. One of the men, a wiry hand named Eli, dismounted and pulled off his hat. "She's there," he said. "Your sister's fine. Scared, but fine. Your father left about a week ago. Didn't say where he was going. Left a note for Nora that said he'd be back in a few days. He hasn't come back." "What did the note say exactly?" Eli pulled a folded paper from his vest. "She gave me this. Said you'd want to see it." Lila opened the note. Her father's handwriting shaky and rushed. "Nora, gone to fix things. Don't tell anyone where I went. Don't trust Harlow. Don't trust anyone. Love, Papa." "Gone to fix things," Lila whispered. She read it again, then again. He went to the men he owes. He went to try to settle it himself. Cole took the note from her gently. He read it once. Your father is either brave or stupid. Those have never been mutually exclusive with him. We need Nora here, tonight. She won't leave the ranch. It's all she has left. Then I'll send men to stay with her until we sort this out. Lila looked up at him. Why? You don't owe my family anything else. You paid the debts. You married me. The deal is done. Cole folded the note and put it in his shirt pocket. The deal was never just about money, Lila. Then what was it about? He looked at her, and in the fading light, his eyes were the darkest she'd ever seen them. I'll tell you. When this is over, I'll tell you everything. He walked to the barn to talk to his men, and Lila stood alone in the yard, holding a cold cup of coffee and a question she wasn't sure she wanted answered. 3 nights later, Lila woke to the sound of glass breaking. She was out of bed in seconds, heart slamming against her ribs. The sound came from downstairs. She pulled on her boots and grabbed the lantern and moved to the hallway. Cole was already there. He was dressed, which meant he hadn't been sleeping. He held a rifle in one hand and motioned for her to stay back with the other. Someone's in the house, she whispered. Kitchen window. Stay here. I'm not staying anywhere. He looked at her. She looked back. He didn't have time to argue. They went down the stairs together. The kitchen was dark. Cold air poured through the broken window. Shattered glass covered the floor, and in the middle of it, wrapped around a rock, was a piece of paper. Cole picked it up. He unfolded it, read it, and his face went completely still. Not angry. Not afraid. Still. The way water goes still before it freezes. What does it say? Lila asked. He handed it to her. 5 words, written in dark ink that might have been blood. Send her back. Last warning. Lila read it 3 times. Her hands didn't shake. Her voice didn't waver. She looked up at Cole with something in her eyes that surprised them both. Let them come, she said. Cole didn't sleep that night. Lila knew because she didn't sleep either, and twice she heard his boots on the stairs pacing slow and steady like a man counting his options. By dawn, he had made his decision. I'm doubling the watch, he told Lila at the kitchen table. His coffee untouched the broken window already boarded up by Eli. 2 men on the road, 2 on the north ridge, 2 at the house. Nobody comes in or out without being seen. You think it's Harlow? Harlow doesn't throw rocks through windows. He sends lawyers and threats. This is someone else, someone more desperate. The men my father owes. Cole nodded. Whoever they are, they think you know something. Or they think having you gives them leverage over your father. Either way, you're the target. Then let me be the target. Let them come to me. We set a meeting, we find out what they want, and we end this. Absolutely not. Cole, I said no. His voice was harder than she'd ever heard it. Not angry at her. Angry at the situation. At the idea of her standing in front of dangerous men like bait on a hook. I didn't marry you to watch you get hurt. You didn't marry me at all. My father sold me to you. Remember, the words came out sharper than she intended. They landed in the space between them like a dropped knife, and Lila watched Cole's face absorb the blow. He didn't flinch. But something behind his eyes dimmed just slightly, and she felt it in her own chest like a bruise. I remember, he said quietly. Then he picked up his coffee, walked out the back door, and didn't come back inside until noon. Ruth found Lila at the ledger an hour later, staring at numbers she wasn't reading. You heard him, Ruth said. I know. Did you mean to? I don't know. Maybe. Sometimes the truth is the cruelest thing you can say to someone who's trying to be kind. Ruth sat down across from her. That man has been called a killer, a brute and a monster by half the territory. None of it touched him. But you in one sentence made him bleed. Do you understand what that means? Lila set down her pen. It means I have power I didn't ask for. It means he cares what you think. And that's the most vulnerable thing Cole Grayson has been in 20 years. The day passed slowly. Lila threw herself into work. She reorganized the supply accounts. She wrote to the Billings mill about lumber pricing. She helped the hands mend a section of paddock fence, working until her hands ached and her mind couldn't race anymore. But underneath all of it, the guilt sat heavy and hot. At supper, Cole ate in silence. He passed her the bread without being asked. He refilled her water without looking at her. The same small kindnesses delivered with the same steady hands, but there was a wall now that hadn't been there that morning, and Lila had built it with 6 words. After Ruth cleared the plates, Lila followed Cole to his study. He was reaching for the door when she spoke. "I was wrong." He stopped. Didn't turn. "What I said this morning, about being sold, that was my father's choice, not yours. And I've been here long enough to know the difference." Cole turned slowly. His face was guarded, careful, the way it had been in the first days of their marriage. "You weren't wrong, though. Not entirely. The arrangement is what it is. I don't pretend otherwise. Maybe the arrangement started that way, but that's not what this is anymore." "What is it then?" The question hung in the air. Lila felt the weight of it, the enormity of answering honestly, and she realized with a flush of something close to panic that she didn't have a safe answer. Every true thing she could say would change something. Open a door she wasn't sure she could close. "It's something I didn't expect," she said finally. "And I need you to be patient with me while I figure out what that means." Cole studied her face. Then the wall came down, just enough, just a crack, and he nodded. "I've been patient for 12 years, Lila. A little longer won't kill me." She almost smiled. Almost. But before she could respond, the sound of horses reached them through the study window. Fast horses, more than one. Cole was at the gun cabinet before Lila could take a breath. He pulled a rifle down and handed her a pistol without asking if she could shoot. "Can you use this? My mother taught me when I was 10. "Good. Stay inside." Cole. Inside Lila. She let him go. Not because she was afraid, but because she saw the focus in his eyes and knew that right now this was what he was built for. She went to the window and watched. 3 riders came out of the dark. Not running, but not slow either. The kind of deliberate pace that says we're not afraid of you. Cole stepped off the porch with Eli and 2 other hands flanking him, rifles visible but not raised. The lead rider pulled up 20 feet from the porch. He was older than Lila expected, weathered, gray at the temples, well-dressed for a man riding at night. He sat his horse like someone accustomed to being obeyed. "Cole Grayson." The man's voice carried clearly. "My name is Victor Marsh. I believe you married into a problem that belongs to me." "I don't know you, Marsh. State your business and get off my land." "My business is Thomas Bennett. He owes me $14,000. He signed papers, collateral papers, and the collateral he listed is the ranch you're standing on." Lila's blood went cold. She pressed closer to the window, her fingers white around the pistol grip. "That's impossible," Cole said. "This land is mine. Has been for 12 years. Bennett had no claim to it." Marsh reached into his coat slowly, making sure every man with a rifle could see his hand, and produced a folded document. According to this agreement signed and witnessed, Thomas Bennett put up his son-in-law's ranch as guarantee against loans totaling $14,000, dated 3 weeks before the wedding. 3 weeks before the wedding. Lila's mind spun. Her father had used Cole's ranch as collateral before the marriage even happened. He'd planned the whole thing, not just the sale of his daughter, but the sale of Cole's entire life. "That document is fraudulent," Cole said, his voice dangerously even. "Bennett had no authority to pledge my property. Any judge in the territory will tell you the same. Maybe? But court takes time, Grayson. Months, years. And in the meantime, I'm short $14,000, and I'm not a patient man." "Then take it up with Bennett. He's the one who cheated you. Bennett is gone, which makes his family the next in line, specifically his daughter, your wife. My wife doesn't owe you a cent. The law might see it differently." Cole took 1 step forward, just one. But the 3 riders' horses all shifted nervously, sensing something their riders couldn't quite name. "Let me make something clear, Marsh. Whatever paper you're holding isn't worth the ink it's printed on. Thomas Bennett lied to me. He lied to his daughters. And he lied to you. If you want justice, go find him. But if you come near this ranch again, or near my wife, I'll treat it the same way I treat any trespass." Marsh smiled. It was a cold, calculated smile. "You can't fight a legal claim with threats, Grayson. Watch me." Marsh folded the document back into his coat. "I'll give you 1 week. $14,000, or I file in territorial court. And when a judge sees that your wife's father signed this agreement, and that you married into the family, knowing debts existed, you might find the law isn't as friendly as you think." He turned his horse and rode out. His 2 men followed. Nobody fired a shot. But the damage was already done. Lila was waiting in the hallway when Cole came inside. She saw it in his face before he spoke. The weight of it, the scope of what her father had done. "How much did you hear?" he asked. "Everything." "Then you know." "My father used your ranch as collateral. Before the wedding, he planned the whole thing from the start." Cole set the rifle against the wall. He moved slowly like a man carrying something heavy on his back that nobody else could see. "He didn't just plan it, Lila. He engineered it. He owed Harlow. He owed Marsh. Probably others. And he needed someone with assets big enough to cover all of it. So he came to me with a story about a desperate father trying to save his family, and I believed him." "Because you wanted to." Cole looked at her. "What? You believed him because you wanted a reason to not be alone anymore. He saw that in you. And he used it." The truth of it hit them both at the same time. Cole sat down heavily in the hallway chair, a piece of furniture Lila had never seen anyone use, and put his head in his hands. $14,000, he said. "I don't have it. Not liquid. It's all in the land, the cattle, the operation. I'd have to sell half the herd to raise that kind of money, and that would cripple the ranch." Lila sat on the floor in front of him. She didn't think about it. She just sat down the way you sit with someone who's drowning, getting as close as you can without pulling them under. "We'll figure it out," she said. He looked up. His eyes were red not from tears, but from exhaustion, from the weight of years spent building something that one dishonest man was trying to tear apart. "You said we," he said. "I did. You don't owe me that. You're right. I don't owe you anything. That's exactly why it matters." Something broke open in Cole's face. Not dramatically. Not the way it happens in stories. It was quieter than that. A loosening. A release. Like a fist that had been clenched so long the fingers had forgotten they could open. He reached out and took her hand. It was the first time he had touched her on purpose since the wedding. His grip was rough and warm and trembling slightly, and Lila held on. They sat like that for a long time. In the hallway, on the floor, holding hands like 2 people on the edge of a cliff, not sure if they were falling or flying. Ruth found them the next morning asleep in the hallway. Lila on the floor with her back against the wall. Cole in the chair with his hand still wrapped around hers. Ruth covered them with a blanket and went to start the coffee. The week moved fast. Cole contacted a lawyer in Helena. Lila wrote to every legal authority she could think of challenging the validity of her father's collateral agreement. Eli rode to 3 neighboring ranches to build alliances in case Marsh tried to force the issue. On the 4th day, Nora arrived. Lila was in the study when she heard the wagon. She ran outside, and there was her sister, thin and exhausted and dusty from the road, climbing down with a carpet bag in one hand and a shotgun in the other. "Nora." Lila grabbed her, held her, felt her sister's ribs through her dress, and wanted to scream. "2 men came to the ranch." Nora said, her voice flat and hard, in a way Lila had never heard from her. "Day before yesterday. They went through the house, every room, every drawer. They were looking for something. What kit, papers, letters, anything Papa left behind." "Did they find anything?" Nora pulled back and looked at her sister with eyes that were no longer a child's. "I burned everything before they got inside. Every letter, every ledger, every note Papa ever wrote. I lit the whole desk on fire. They broke down the door and found ashes." Lila stared at her. This girl who 3 weeks ago couldn't say Cole Grayson's name without shaking was standing here with a shotgun and ash under her fingernails, talking about burning evidence with the calm of a general. "You're 16, Lila whispered. "I was 16. I think I'm about 40 now." Cole appeared on the porch. Nora looked up at him, and Lila felt her sister stiffen. The fear was still there, buried deeper, but there. "You're safe here," Cole said. "Not soft, not gentle, just certain. The way you say something that isn't a promise, but a fact." Nora studied him for a long moment. Whatever she saw must have been enough because she nodded once and walked inside without another word. That night, Nora told them everything. Their father had been borrowing for years. Not just from Harlow and Marsh, but from at least 3 other men. He'd used the ranch, the cattle, Lila's future, even Nora's dowry as collateral for different debts at the same time. The same assets promised to different creditors. A web of lies so tangled that when one thread pulled loose, the whole thing collapsed. He was running a scheme. Nora said, her voice hollow. Using one loan to pay off another. It worked for a while, then it didn't. "When did you find out?" Lila asked. 6 months ago. I found the letters. I confronted him. He cried, begged me not to tell you, said he was going to fix it. Nora laughed bitterly. Fixing it meant selling you to Cole and hoping the math worked out. Lila felt the anger rise again, bright and sharp, but this time it was layered with something else. Grief. For the father she thought she knew. For the family that turned out to be built on quicksand. "There's something else," Nora said. She reached into her carpet bag and pulled out a small leather journal. "I didn't burn everything. I saved this. It was hidden under a floorboard. I think it's Papa's real ledger, the one that shows everything." Cole took the journal and opened it. He read for a long time, turning pages slowly, his expression getting darker with each one. When he finally closed it, his voice was flat. "Your father didn't just borrow money, Nora. He was laundering it, moving money through cattle sales for men who didn't want their transactions traced. That's not debt. That's criminal." The room went silent. Lila felt the ground dissolving beneath her feet. Everything she thought she knew about her father, about her family, about the simple story of a gambler's debts was wrong. The truth was uglier, deeper, more dangerous than any rumor anyone had ever told about Cole Grayson. "If Marsh and the others find out about this journal," Cole said, "they won't file papers, they'll come with guns. This book is evidence of federal crimes. It could put all of them in prison." "Then we use it," Lila said. Cole looked at her. "You want to use your father's criminal ledger as leverage against armed men. I want to protect this ranch. I want to protect my sister. And I want to make sure the man I married doesn't lose everything because my father was a coward and a liar." She met his eyes and held them. "Give me the book. Let me write to Marsh. Let me make the deal. Lila, these are dangerous men. And I'm a dangerous woman. They just don't know it yet." Cole stared at her. Ruth stared at her. Nora stared at her. And in the silence of that kitchen with a criminal's journal on the table and threats closing in from every direction, something shifted in the room like a compass finding north. Cole slid the journal across the table to her. "Tell me the plan," he said, and for the first time in her life, Lila Bennett realized that she wasn't just surviving anymore. She was fighting. For the ranch. For her sister. For the man everyone feared and nobody understood. And she was not going to lose. Lila spent 2 days with the journal. She read every entry twice. She cross-referenced names, dates, amounts. She built a map of her father's lies on the back of a feed invoice, and when she was finished, the map covered the entire page. 7 men. Her father had borrowed from 7 different men over 4 years. He had promised the same assets to at least 3 of them. He had moved money through cattle sales that never happened, signed receipts for livestock that didn't exist, and used the profits from one fraud to service the debts of another. It was a machine built on nothing, and it had been running on fumes long before Lila ever walked down that aisle. "Marsh is the biggest creditor," she told Cole on the second night the journal spread between them on the study desk. 14,000, but Harlow is owed 6, and there's a third name I don't recognize, someone called Pruitt. He's owed 9,000, and his notes are the oldest. Pruitt. Cole's voice went flat. Emmett Pruitt. You know him. I know of him. He runs mining operations east of Butte, not the legal kind. He uses men until they break, and then he replaces them. Women, too. He's not a creditor, Lila. He's a predator. My father borrowed from a predator. Your father borrowed from everyone. Pruitt is the one who would kill over it. Lila sat back. The scope of it was staggering. Her father hadn't just dug a hole. He'd dug a grave and he'd shoved his whole family in before climbing out himself. Here's what I want to do, she said. Marsh is a businessman. He's angry, but he's rational. If we show him the journal, show him that his collateral agreement is worthless because the same property was promised to 2 other men, he'll realize he can't collect. Not from us, not from anyone. The paper is void. And if he doesn't see it that way, then we remind him that this journal proves he accepted collateral from a man who was laundering money, which makes Marsh complicit. If this goes to a federal court, he doesn't just lose $14,000. He loses everything. Cole leaned forward. You want to threaten a powerful man with prison. I want to give a powerful man a reason to walk away. There's a difference. A big one. I'm not threatening him. I'm offering him a choice. Forget the debt and keep his reputation, or fight for it and lose everything. Cole studied her with an expression she was learning to read. It wasn't doubt. It wasn't resistance. It was something closer to awe, carefully hidden behind the stoic mask he wore for everyone else. And Pruitt. Lila's jaw tightened. Pruitt is different. Pruitt doesn't care about courts. We handle Marsh first, cut the number of enemies in half, and then we deal with Pruitt from a position of strength. You've thought about this. I haven't thought about anything else. Cole picked up the journal and held it carefully like it was loaded. If this goes wrong, Lila, if Marsh calls our bluff or Pruitt moves faster than we expect, this book becomes the most dangerous thing in the territory. Anyone who holds it becomes a target. I know. And you still want to do this? I don't want to do this. I have to do this. Because nobody else is going to. He set the journal down. He looked at her across the desk, and for the first time since the day they met, his eyes were completely open. No walls. No stone. Just a man looking at a woman and seeing something he'd given up believing existed. All right, he said. We do it your way. But I'm there when you meet Marsh. That's not negotiable. I wouldn't have it any other way. The letter went out the next morning. Lila wrote it herself, 3 careful paragraphs that said exactly enough and nothing more. She invited Victor Marsh to the ranch for a conversation. She mentioned the journal. She didn't specify what was in it, only that it contained information that would be of significant interest to all parties involved. You're baiting him, Nora said, reading over her shoulder. I'm inviting him to make a smart decision. If he takes it as bait, that tells me something about him. The response came 2 days later. Marsh would come, alone, Saturday at noon. The days between felt like years. Lila prepared like a lawyer building a case. She copied the most damaging pages of the journal and locked the original in Cole's safe. She rehearsed her arguments. She anticipated Marsh's responses and built counter-arguments for each one. Ruth watched her pace the study at midnight and brought her tea without comment. Cole watched too, quietly, constantly, not hovering, but present. He would appear at her door with coffee. He would sit in the study while she worked, reading his own papers, asking nothing, just being there. And Lila, who had spent her whole life taking care of everyone else, realized she didn't know what to do with a man who took care of her without making it feel like ownership. On Friday night, she couldn't sleep. She went downstairs and found Cole on the porch sitting in the dark. You should rest, he said. So should you. She sat next to him, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. The night was cold and she hadn't brought a shawl, and before she could think about going back inside, Cole shrugged off his coat and draped it over her shoulders without a word. It smelled like leather and wood smoke, and something underneath, that was just him. Lila pulled it tighter and tried not to think about what that meant. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "You're going to anyway. The day we met, in the church. You kissed my forehead instead of my mouth. Why?" Cole was quiet for so long she thought he wasn't going to answer. Then he spoke, and his voice was lower than she'd ever heard it. "Because you didn't choose me. And I wasn't going to take something that wasn't offered." The words hit her somewhere deep, somewhere she'd been protecting with anger and fear and walls of her own. She felt them land, felt them settle, felt them rearrange something fundamental inside her chest. "Cole? Yeah. When this is over, when Marsh and Pruitt and all of it is done, I want to have a conversation with you. A real one, about what this is." He turned to look at her. In the dark, she could only see the outline of his face, but she felt the weight of his attention, like a hand pressed against her heart. "I'd like that," he said. Saturday came fast. Marsh arrived at noon, exactly riding a fine horse, wearing a fine coat, and carrying the expression of a man who believed he held every card. Cole met him in the yard. Lila waited in the study, the copied pages arranged on the desk. Ruth brought Marsh coffee. He didn't drink it. Cole stood by the door, arms crossed, and Lila sat behind the desk and looked at the man who thought he was owed $14,000. "Mr. Marsh," she began. "Thank you for coming." "I didn't come for pleasantries, Mrs. Grayson. I came for my money." "You came for money that was never legitimately owed to you, and I'm going to show you why." She laid out the first copied page. Marsh leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "This is your collateral agreement with Thomas Bennett, signed March 15th. It pledges this ranch as security for a $14,000 loan." She laid out a second page. "This is a separate agreement between Thomas Bennett and Jack Harlow, signed February 28th, pledging the same ranch as security for $6,000. She laid out a third. "And this is an agreement between Thomas Bennett and Emmett Pruitt, signed the previous November, pledging the same ranch for $9,000. Marsh's face changed. The confidence didn't disappear, but it cracked the way ice cracks when you step on it. You can still stand, but you know the waters underneath. "Your collateral is worthless," Lila said. "The same property was pledged 3 times to 3 different creditors. Any court in the territory will void all 3 agreements on the basis of fraud. Thomas Bennett never had authority to pledge this ranch to anyone. It doesn't belong to him. It never did. The marriage creates a legal connection. The marriage creates nothing. I checked with a lawyer in Helena. Montana territory law does not transfer property rights through marriage without explicit deed transfer, which never occurred. Cole Grayson's ranch belongs to Cole Grayson. My father's promises were worthless before the ink dried." Marsh sat very still. Lila watched his mind work, watched him calculate, reassess, recalculate. He was a smart man. Smart men were either easier or harder to deal with. She was about to find out which. "Even if the collateral is void," Marsh said carefully, "the debt remains. Your father owes me $14,000. My father owes a lot of people a lot of money. But that's his debt, not mine and not my husband's. We didn't co-sign. We didn't guarantee. We had no knowledge of the agreement. You lent money to a con man, Mr. Marsh. That's your loss, not ours. You expect me to just walk away from $14,000? I expect you to make a smart decision." Lila laid out one more page. This one was different. Names, dates, amounts. A record of cash moving through fictional cattle sales, cleaned and redirected to accounts that didn't bear their owners' real names. Marsh looked at the page, and for the first time his face went white. "This journal documents money laundering, Mr. Marsh. Specifically, it documents money that moved through Thomas Bennett's accounts and into the hands of men who didn't want those transactions traced. Your name appears 4 times. That's not... You accepted funds from cattle sales that never happened. Whether you knew they were fraudulent or not, your name is in this ledger. If this book reaches a federal marshal, you're looking at a lot more than a lost investment." The room was silent. Cole hadn't moved from the door. He hadn't spoken. He didn't need to. This was Lila's fight, and she was winning it. Marsh sat for a long time. His hands were folded in his lap, perfectly still, but Lila could see the tendons moving in his jaw. "What do you want?" he asked finally. "I want you to walk away. Tear up your agreement. Forget the debt. And never come near this ranch or my family again. And the journal stays in our safe. Insurance. As long as you honor the deal, nobody ever sees it. And if Bennett surfaces, then you take it up with Bennett, not with us." Marsh stood slowly. He buttoned his coat. He looked at Lila with an expression that had shifted from anger to something she didn't expect. Respect. "Your father is a snake, Mrs. Grayson, but you are not your father." "No," Lila said. "I'm not." Marsh walked out without another word. Cole watched him right away, then closed the study door and turned to Lila. "That was the most impressive thing I've ever seen," he said. "We're not done. That was the reasonable one. Pruitt won't be." "I know, but right now, just for 1 minute, I want you to know that what you just did was extraordinary." Lila's hands were shaking. The adrenaline was draining out of her like water through sand, and underneath it was exhaustion so deep she could feel it in her bones. "I need to sit down," she said. "You are sitting down." She looked at the chair beneath her and laughed. It was a strange, thin sound, half relief and half terror, and Cole crossed the room and knelt in front of her desk and took both her trembling hands in his steady ones. "Hey," he said. "Look at me." She looked at him. Up close, she could see the lines around his eyes, the scar along his jaw. She'd never asked about the way his dark eyes held something burning and barely contained. "You're safe," he said. "Nora's safe. The ranch is safe. You did that. We did that. You. I stood by a door. You went to war with a piece of paper and a spine made of iron." She laughed again, and this time it was real warm and messy, and full of things she wasn't ready to name. His hands tightened around hers, and she didn't pull away. "Cole." "Yeah. That conversation I said I wanted to have. When this is over." "Yeah. I don't want to wait." His breath caught. She heard it. Felt it in the way his fingers went still. He looked at her, and every wall he'd ever built was gone, stripped away like paint in a storm, and underneath was just a man. Tired. Lonely. Hoping for something he was afraid to reach for. "Lila," he said, and her name in his mouth sounded like a prayer spoken by someone who'd forgotten how to pray. "I choose you," she whispered. "Not because of the contract, not because of the debt, not because I have nowhere else to go. I choose you because you're the best man I've ever known, and I didn't see it because I was too busy being afraid." He didn't kiss her. Not yet. He pressed his forehead against hers and closed his eyes, and she felt something break free in him that had been locked away for years. His breathing was ragged. His hands were trembling worse than hers now. "Say it again," he whispered. "I choose you." He kissed her then, slow, careful, like a man touching something precious for the first time, terrified of breaking it. Lila kissed him back, and in that kiss was every coffee cup, every quiet morning, every small kindness he'd given her, without asking for a single thing in return. When they pulled apart, Cole's eyes were wet. He didn't try to hide it. He just looked at her with the kind of raw, unguarded love that strong men spend their whole lives hiding, and he let her see every bit of it. "I have loved you since the church," he said. "Since you walked down that aisle, shaking and scared, and still held your head up. I loved you then, and I love you now, and I will love you until they put me in the ground." Lila cupped his face in her hands. "Then stop sleeping in your chair and come upstairs." His eyes widened. She almost laughed at the shock on his face, this man who stared down armed men without blinking, coming undone because a woman asked him to stay. "Are you sure?" he asked. "I have never been more sure of anything in my life." They walked upstairs together, hand in hand. Ruth saw them from the kitchen and pressed her knuckles to her lips, tears streaming down her face. Nora saw them from the parlor and smiled for the first time since she'd arrived. And the door closed behind them. Not locked. Not barred. Just closed. because there was nothing on the other side to keep out anymore. But in the dark hours before dawn, while the ranch slept and the world was quiet, a rider came up the north road. He didn't stop at the gate. He dropped a canvas bag and rode away fast. Eli found it at first light. He opened it, looked inside, and ran for the house. Cole met him at the door, took the bag and looked inside. It was Thomas Bennett's hat, stained with blood, and pinned to it was a note in handwriting none of them recognized. "She bought one man's silence. She can't buy mine. Pruitt." Cole closed the bag. He looked at Lila, who stood on the stairs with her hair loose and her eyes already understanding what this meant. The war wasn't over. It was just beginning. Lila held the blood-stained hat in her hands for a long time. She turned it over slowly, studying the dark patch on the brim, the frayed edges, the sweat stains that told the story of a man who wore it every day of his life. Her father's hat. The one he never took off, not even at supper, until her mother would reach over and pull it from his head with a smile. "He could still be alive," Nora said from the doorway, her voice thin as wire. "Blood on a hat doesn't mean he's dead. It means Pruitt has him," Cole said. "Or had him. Either way, the message is clear. He's telling us the journal trick won't work twice." Lila set the hat on the table. She looked at it the way a person looks at a closed door, knowing what's on the other side and choosing whether to open it. "Then we don't use the journal," she said. "We use something better." Cole frowned. "What's better than evidence of federal crimes? The truth." Lila turned to face him. "Pruitt doesn't want money, Cole. If he did, he would have sent a number, not a bloody hat. He wants fear. He wants us to panic and make a mistake. So we don't panic. We go to him." "That's exactly what he wants." "No. He wants us to run, or to beg, or to hand something over in desperation. He doesn't want us to walk into his territory with our backs straight and call his bluff. Men like Pruitt don't know what to do with people who aren't afraid of them. You don't know this man, Lila. I know men like him. I was raised by one." The words landed hard. Nora looked at the floor. Cole's jaw tightened. But Lila didn't take it back because it was true. Thomas Bennett and Emmett Pruitt were cut from the same cloth. They both used people. They both traded in fear. The only difference was scale. "I'm going to Butte," Lila said. "Tomorrow." "Not alone, you're not." "I didn't say alone. I said I'm going. Whether you come with me is your choice." Cole stared at her. Then he laughed. It was short, rough, surprised out of him like a cough. "You know, when your father offered me a wife, I thought I was getting someone who needed saving. Turns out, I married the most stubborn woman in Montana Territory. Is that a complaint? It's a compliment. And yes, I'm coming with you. But we do this smart. Eli stays here with Nora and 4 armed men. Nobody in, nobody out until we're back." Nora stepped forward. "I want to come." "No," Lila and Cole said at the same time. "He's my father too." "Which is exactly why you stay here," Lila said. She took her sister's hands. "If something happens to me, you're all that's left of this family. I need you safe. I need to know that whatever I walk into, there's someone to walk back to." Nora's eyes filled. She blinked hard, squared her shoulders, and nodded. 16 years old, and already carrying the weight of a woman twice her age. They left before dawn. Cole drove the wagon. Lila sat beside him with the journal in her coat and a pistol in her belt. They didn't speak for the first hour, but the silence between them was different now. It had texture, warmth. The comfortable quiet of 2 people who had already said the hardest things and survived. "I need to tell you something," Cole said as the sun came up, "about why I really agreed to marry you." Lila looked at him. "You said you were lonely. That was part of it, but not all of it." He kept his eyes on the road. "I knew your father, not well, but years ago before you were born, your father and my father were friends. They worked cattle together in Kansas. When my parents died, your father was supposed to take me in. It was an agreement between them, a handshake promise." Lila's breath stopped. What? He never did. He took the money my parents left, told the authorities he didn't know any Graysons, and disappeared. I was 14 years old, and the one man who was supposed to help me stole from me and vanished. The wagon creaked. The horses pulled. And Lila felt something shift in her understanding of every single thing that had happened since the day her father came home with a deal. "You knew," she whispered, "when he came to you with the marriage proposal. You already knew who he was. I knew exactly who he was. Then why did you say yes? Why help the man who abandoned you?" Cole turned to look at her, and his eyes held something so complex, so layered with old pain and stubborn hope, that Lila couldn't look away. "Because he had 2 daughters. And I thought about what would happen to them if I said no. I thought about a 14-year-old kid standing alone with nothing, and I didn't want that for you. Or for Nora." Lila pressed her hand to her mouth. The tears came before she could stop them, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming recognition that this man, this feared, misunderstood silent man, had married her, not for loneliness, not for desire, not for power, but because he couldn't bear to let history repeat itself. "You saved us out of mercy," she said. "I saved you because somebody should have saved me, and nobody did." She reached over and took his hand on the reins. He held it. They rode the rest of the way to Butte, like that connected, anchored 2 people built from different kinds of wreckage, holding each other steady. Butte was a hard town, loud, dirty, full of men with empty eyes and pockets full of dust. Cole asked around at the mining offices, and by afternoon, they had a location. Pruitt's operation was east of town, a compound that functioned as a private kingdom. He owned the mines, the workers, and the law in that corner of the territory. They arrived at the compound gate near dusk. 2 armed men stopped them. "We're here to see Emmett Pruitt," Lila said before Cole could speak. "Tell him it's Lila Grayson, Thomas Bennett's daughter, and tell him I brought what he wants." The guards exchanged looks. One of them disappeared inside. 5 minutes later he returned and waved them through. Pruitt met them in a large room that smelled like cigar smoke and money. He was smaller than Lila expected, narrow-shouldered, clean-shaven. He wore spectacles and a vest with a gold watch chain, and if you didn't know what he was, you'd think he was a banker or a school principal. "Mrs. Grayson." His voice was soft, polite, the kind of polite that comes from knowing you don't need to shout. "Thank you for coming. I understand you're a woman who prefers direct communication. Where is my father?" "Alive. For now. He came to me 3 weeks ago, full of promises as usual. Said he could repay me if I gave him time. I gave him time. He used it to try to steal from one of my operations instead." Pruitt removed his spectacles and cleaned them. "Your father is not a smart man, Mrs. Grayson. I'm aware. I could have killed him. Most men in my position would have. But I'm a businessman, not a butcher. I prefer solutions that benefit everyone." "What do you want?" $9,000. "And the journal." "The journal is worth more than $9,000 to you. It could put you in prison for 20 years. Pruitt smiled. "So you've read it. Good. Then you understand why I can't have it floating around in a rancher's safe in the middle of nowhere." "I'll give you the journal," Lila said, "but not for $9,000. For my father. Alive, unharmed, delivered to the ranch within the week. And the $9,000 doesn't exist. You lent money to a con man based on fraudulent collateral. You accepted laundered funds through fake cattle sales. You employed workers under conditions that would interest every federal marshal in the territory. The $9,000 is the least of your problems, Mr. Pruitt. I'm offering you a clean exit. Take it." Pruitt's smile faded. He looked at Cole, who stood behind Lila's chair with his arms crossed and his face carved from granite. "Your wife is impressive, Grayson." "I know. She's also making a dangerous gamble. I could have both of you held here until I get what I want." "You could try," Cole said. "But I left instructions with my men. If we're not back by tomorrow noon, every page of that journal goes to the territorial marshal, the governor's office, and 3 newspapers. And the original stays in a safe that nobody can find." Pruitt's eyes narrowed. He looked from Cole to Lila and back again, and Lila could see the calculation happening behind those spectacles. Risk versus reward. Pride versus survival. "I could call your bluff," Pruitt said quietly. "You could," Lila said. "But you're a businessman, not a gambler. You just said so yourself. So let me lay out the math. If you take the deal, you lose $9,000 and a journal. If you don't, you lose everything. Your minds, your freedom, your reputation, and for what? To prove a point. To a woman you've never met, is your pride really worth more than your life?" The silence stretched. 1 second. 5. 10. Pruitt sat motionless, his spectacles in his hand, his eyes fixed on Lila, with an intensity that would have made most people look away. Lila didn't look away. "Your father," Pruitt said finally, "doesn't deserve a daughter like you." "I know. Do we have a deal?" Pruitt put his spectacles back on. He stood. He extended his hand. "Send me the journal. I'll send you your father." Lila shook his hand. Her grip was firm, steady. She held his eyes and didn't blink. "If he arrives with so much as a scratch that wasn't there before," she said, "the deal is off and the copies go out. He'll arrive whole, you have my word. Your word and a nickel will get me a cup of coffee, Mr. Pruitt, but I'll take it anyway." They walked out of the compound. They climbed into the wagon. Cole drove 2 miles before he pulled the horses to a stop and turned to her. "How are your hands?" Lila held them up. They were shaking so hard she couldn't have held a cup of water. "I thought I was going to be sick the entire time," she said. "You didn't show it." "I learned that from you." He pulled her close. She pressed her face against his chest and shook, and he held her until the shaking stopped and her breathing steadied, and the world felt solid again. "Let's go home," she said. She nodded. Thomas Bennett arrived at the ranch 6 days later. He came in the back of a supply wagon, thin, bruised, and wearing the expression of a man who had looked death in the face and been sent back with a note pinned to his chest. Lila met him in the yard. Nora stood behind her. Cole stood behind them both. Thomas looked at his oldest daughter, and his eyes filled with tears. "Lila, I'm so sorry. I never meant for—" "Sorry. Stop." Her voice was quiet, not angry, not cold, just finished. "I don't want apologies, Papa. I want the truth. All of it. Right now. No more lies." He told them. Everything. Sitting at the kitchen table with Ruth's coffee growing cold in front of him, he laid out every deal, every deception, every desperate move he'd made in 4 years of spiraling failure. The gambling, the borrowing, the fake cattle sales, the decision to offer Lila as a wife because it was the only card he had left, and then the part nobody expected. "I knew about Cole's parents," Thomas said, staring at the table. "I knew his father. We were friends in Kansas. When they died, I was supposed to take Cole in, raise him like my own. But you took his parents' money instead," Lila said. Thomas flinched. "I was young. I was broke. I told myself I'd send for him later. I never did. And that guilt, it ate at me for 20 years. When I needed help, when everything was falling apart, I went to Cole because I thought maybe if he saved us, it would make up for what I did to him." "It doesn't," Cole said from the doorway. Thomas looked at him. "I know. You stole from a dead man's son. You sold your daughter to cover your debts. You lied to everyone who ever trusted you. I know. And the only reason you're sitting in my kitchen right now is because your daughter walked into a criminal's compound and outplayed him to save your life." Thomas looked at Lila. The shame in his eyes was complete, total. The kind of shame that doesn't come from getting caught, but from finally understanding the weight of what you've done. "What happens now?" Thomas whispered. Lila looked at Cole. Cole looked at Lila. And in that look was a conversation that didn't need words. "You leave," Lila said. "You go somewhere new. You start clean. No gambling, no schemes, no borrowed money. Lila, Nora stays with us. She's safe here. She's fed here. She has a future here. Thomas's face crumpled. You're taking my daughter. No, Papa. I'm giving her what you couldn't. A home that doesn't fall apart. Nora stepped forward. She looked at her father with eyes that were steady and dry. I love you, Papa. But I can't trust you. And I can't live my life waiting for the next lie to land. Lila and Cole will take care of me. And maybe in time you can earn back enough to visit. Thomas Bennett put his head in his hands and wept. Not the performative tears of a man looking for sympathy. The broken, ugly crying of a man who finally understood that the price of his choices was losing everything he loved. He left the next morning. Lila packed him food. Nora gave him a new hat. Cole gave him a horse and $50 in cash. Don't come back until you're a different man, Cole told him. Thomas mounted the horse. He looked down at his daughters standing side by side, one woman who had saved his life and one girl who had burned his secrets, and he nodded slowly. I don't deserve either of you, he said. No, Lila agreed. But you're our father, and that means something even when it shouldn't. He rode away. They watched until he was gone. Nora took Lila's hand on one side. Cole took the other. And they stood in the yard of the ranch that had almost been stolen from them, together whole-held. The months that followed were quiet. The good kind of quiet. The kind that comes after storms when everything feels washed clean and new. Lila took over the ranch books completely. Under her management, the operation grew. She negotiated better contracts, found new buyers, and within 6 months, the Grayson Ranch was more profitable than it had ever been. Cole joked that he should have married an accountant years ago. Lila told him he did. Nora thrived. She studied with a tutor Cole hired from Helena. She learned to ride properly, to manage livestock, to shoot straight. The frightened girl who arrived with a shotgun and ash under her nails became a young woman with opinions, ambitions, and a laugh that rang across the property like a bell. Ruth stayed. Of course Ruth stayed. She declared that she had waited 12 years for that house to feel like a home, and she wasn't going anywhere now that it finally did. The town changed too, slowly. The way towns do. People stopped whispering about Cole Grayson. They started nodding to him on the street. Martha Perkins the gossip told anyone who would listen that she had always said Cole was a good man underneath. Nobody believed her, but nobody corrected her either. One evening, 8 months after the wedding, Lila found Cole sitting on the porch where they had sat that night before the marsh meeting. The same spot, the same quiet. She sat beside him. He put his arm around her. She leaned into him, and they fit together the way two broken pieces fit when they find the crack they were meant to fill. I have to tell you something, Lila said. Good something or bad something. Depends on how you feel about being a father. Cole went still. Completely, absolutely still. Lila felt his arm tighten around her, felt his breathing stop, felt the whole man pause like the world had just shifted on its axis. Say that again, he whispered. You're going to be a father, Cole. He turned to her. His eyes were wide. His mouth was open. This man who faced down armed criminals without blinking, who stared into the barrel of threats and never flinched, looked at his wife and completely fell apart. Are you sure? Ruth confirmed it this morning. She's been suspecting for weeks. Ruth knew before me. Ruth knows everything before everyone. You should know that by now. He laughed. It burst out of him like something uncaged, bright and wild, and full of a joy so raw it was almost painful to witness. He pulled her into his arms and held her so tight she could feel his heartbeat against her own. I'm going to be terrible at this, he said into her hair. You're going to be extraordinary at this. I don't know anything about children. You didn't know anything about wives either. You figured it out. He pulled back and looked at her face. His eyes were wet, his hands were shaking, and the smile on his face was something Lila knew she would remember for the rest of her life, because it was the smile of a man who had spent 20 years building walls and just watched them all come down. I love you, he said. I love you more than this ranch, more than this land, more than every single thing I've spent my life building. You are the only thing I've ever wanted that I was afraid to want. Lila kissed him. Slow and deep and certain, the way you kiss someone when you know they're yours and you're theirs, and nothing in the world can change that. You were the cowboy everyone feared, she said, and you were the woman everyone pitied. Look at us now, he smiled. Look at us now. Inside the house, Ruth was already knitting. Nora was reading by lamplight. The dogs were sleeping by the fire. And the ranch, the place that had been built by one lonely man out of spite and survival, was finally what it was always meant to be. A home. A refuge. A beginning. They made her marry the cowboy everyone feared. They thought they were throwing her away. But Lila Bennett didn't break. She didn't run. She walked into the fire with her head held high and her heart wide open, and she came out the other side holding the hand of the man she chose. Not because she had to, because she wanted to, and that made all the difference.